Hi, and welcome to Introduction to Unity for VR for Architects. So the first thing we're going to do is we will launch the Unity Hub. So go ahead and launch that. As soon as you have this screen showing, go into Installs and check which Unity version you have. So these are the two versions that I have installed. If you go into official releases, this is where these are. And if you don't have any versions or these ones, just select Install Editor. And this will take you to selecting the version that you would like to install. So in my case, I've only got LTS or long-term support versions installed, means they're the most stable versions. There's also beta versions, alpha, and then you can always go into archive to get previous versions, which Unity will provide to you. So in our case, I have these two LTS versions. So I'm going to go to projects and I'm going to select new project. In my case, it doesn't really matter for the sake of this tutorial, but I will go with 2021.3.21 F1 and I will select 3D URP. If you don't already have this downloaded, you see these little cloud icons here. You can click that and it'll download it for you. Let's just go ahead and name it Unity Introduction. Select where you would like to save it, and then select Create Project. So one thing to know with URP while this loads, URP means Universal Render Pipelines, and performance-wise, it's higher than the standard 3D pipeline. There's also HDRP, which is huge, and it's meant for hyperrealism. In our case, it's a bit overkill, so that's not what we're going to use. We're going to go with URP. So if you see this error, I typically just, you may or may not see it, I typically just press retry, and then it'll come back here. You go ahead and read it, but at this point, I'm going to select continue. So once Unity loads up, this is the default view that you see. You can see the hierarchy tab. This is typically similar to what you would know as layers. And this is where, all your objects show up. So main camera, for example, if you select on an object here in hierarchy and you tap the button F on your keyboard, or you double click on it, it'll zoom into that. Directional light, it'll take you to that. Global volume, it'll take you to that. So for now, don't worry about what each of these items are. Let's just go through everything. So there's hierarchy, there's scene. So the scene is where you do most of your building. This is your workspace. There's also game. So this is, when you create a bunch of rules and objects here in scene, and if you press play, it enables the game window. And then if you press play again, the game window goes away. And you can flip between the three. So you can flip kind of which one you need to go to. The next thing you're going to see is the inspector. So if nothing is selected, the inspector is blank. But let's say if I select main camera, all of a sudden, you have all of these items in inspector. So that shows the properties. It shows, if some kind of scripts are associated with the object, you're going to see all that in inspector. The next thing we're going to see is the project window. This is where a lot of your files, a lot of your settings, your materials, everything are saved here. So you don't typically mess with anything in your packages. And mostly what you'll be working under is assets. Next, you're going to look at the console. This is where you see most of the errors, or when Unity is doing something, a lot of the outputs show up in console. When I say output, it means the coding or the programming outputs, or any supplementary information shows up in the console. You can move windows around to reconfigure for yourself. For example, I could move the console window to the right if I wanted to. I can take it back here. I could move it up here. Uh, you can set up your space however you like. You can also click on these three dots on the top right corner and can change to one column layout or two column layout, whatever works for you. And then here as well, you can extend and go back, and then you can also reduce the size of your icons and increase them by using this little slider down here. For navigation, you typically use WASD. So for example, if I have my mouse pointed in here and I select WASD, I'm going to start flying around, but you have to have your right mouse button pressed while you're doing it. So W will take you forward, S will take you back, A to the side, D to the right, and then you can also use Q for down and E for up. And all of this is being done while I have my right mouse button pressed. Scrolling in and out is zooming in and out. If you have lost your view, let's say if I lose my view completely, you can double click on an item and it'll take you back to where you need to go. The middle mouse button will help you pan. The right mouse button is just going to let you sort of skew around in the space. And then if you press Alt, the right mouse button will zoom you in and out. The middle mouse button will help you pan, and the left mouse button will help you pivot around. So every object is called a game object. That's just how Unity classifies them. So all of these main camera, directional light, global volume, everything is called a game object. How they are different is how the properties are different. So if you were to click on this and you look at the inspector window, you're going to notice that the properties are all different for each of these items. And then that's kind of how you control them. And the inspector is where you see all of those properties. So if we are to look at the one component that is present in all game objects, you'll notice that it's the transform component. And in the transform, you have your position, rotation, scale, and the position is basically within the global space is how it's positioned. So all of these items will have its own unique coordinate, and then the rotation and the scale as well is all defined in here. So we can actually hide game objects. For example, main camera, if I want to hide it, I can select this eyeball and it's going to hide the object. So right now you can see how it's hidden. And if I click it again, it's going to show up. But disabling, if I want to actually disable it, I need to select it and then go back to the inspector and then just click this, this check mark. That actually disables it. Just hiding it in the hierarchy doesn't hide it. You know, let's say if you were to press play, it's still going to show up in your game. It's still enabled. So to disable it, really, you have to go and select this item. So let's select sample scene. We're going to create a primitive game object. So you can right-click in your hierarchy window, go into 3D object, and then let's say cube. So this is one of the most basic things you can make. So just select it, press F. It's going to zoom into it. F is for focus. And then you can move it using this this gumball transformation. This blue, red, and green. It moves it along, you know, two axes. And then you can also rotate it. So here you have menu items and you can rotate it using this. Also on your keyboard, QWERTY QWERTY will help you go between them. So Q is going to give you this hand. W gives you the move function or the transform function. E gives you rotation. R gives you scale. T gives you sort of like being able to transform objects in this way. And then Y kind of gives you everything. So if you're feeling adventurous, just press Y and go ahead and play with your object a little bit. So Unity doesn't actually have a really good snapping system. It's not like your typical CAD software like Rhino or AutoCAD. So let's say if we are to move to the transform function, you can press V, and now you can snap to your vertices. Or here you can see you can snap to your like volumetric centroid of this object. So V is going to help you snap to these vertices. V for Victor, and then Shift and Control. So before we do that, let's just make a couple more objects here. So we'll make another cube. Let's go ahead and make another one. So if I was to press Shift and Control all together, and I try to move this, object, it'll help me place it. Yeah, so you just press Shift and Control while you have your transform button selected, and then you'll see how the icon changes in the middle, and then it'll help you place objects on top of other objects, like so. So that's one way to place objects on top of each other in Unity in terms of navigation. And then the basic material in here is this lit material, as you can see. I can always apply new materials to it, but lit is the basic one. So if you go in, you select the primitive, you go into inspector, you go into mesh renderer, which is open in here. If you go into materials, you can see lit, and then click on the circle next to the material name and it will show you options. So here now you can start to see different options of materials that are available to you within Unity or within this file for that matter. So then you can apply some of these items as well. And if you double click on lit, it takes you to where it's actually saved. So if you go under packages and universal vendor pipeline, you come into materials, and here it'll show you some of these different materials that are available. So you can actually group objects within the hierarchy. So let's say if you have these three, or let's pick these two objects, I can drag cube 2 and make it a child of cube 1, for example. And then if I click on cube 1 and I move this, everything is moving together. But if I select just cube 2 and I move this, it's going to move just cube 2. So I'm kind of stuck with selecting cube 1 here as a group and then having to move it. But if I select on the cubes individually, I'm still not able to move cube 1 individually. I would have to ungroup it. So I could just take this and drag it out of cube 2. The other thing we can do in here is we can make empty game objects, and we can make game objects children of it. So if I just want to make a group, for example, and not tie up cube 1 as something that has to be moved, and then every other object is going to move with it, I can right click in the hierarchy, select create empty, gives you this game object, and I can group other objects into it. So it's basically an empty layer that now contains my cube 1, cube 2, cube, and now if I select game object and I move all of these items, they'll all move. But if I select cube 1, cube 2, or cube separately, they will move on their own. And that's it for this tutorial for Introduction to Unity and the interface.